Live from downtown Detroit, home of WDIV and Click on Detroit, Local 4 News at 5 starts now.
Absolutely outrageous. A man throwing sandbags onto I-96 from an overpass trying to hit cars. Well, one car did take a direct hit, as you can see, and that driver was seriously injured.
What happens now with the Michigan Supreme Court striking down the governor's emergency orders? Everything from mask requirements to restaurant restrictions seems to be up in the air.
We're going to begin, though, with live pictures from Walter Reed Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland. That's where President Trump is expected to be released from the hospital 90 minutes from now.
There have been multiple new developments throughout the day as the president recovers from COVID-19, so let's get you caught up.
First, the cases among White House staffers continue to climb. Today, Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany and 2 of her deputies have tested positive and will now be working remotely. That comes after former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie was hospitalized with the virus over the weekend. But as Alice Barr reports, the big news came this afternoon. The president is set to head back to the White House. Alice.
Devin and Kimberly, President Trump announced to the world that he would be leaving the hospital the same way he announced he was going in, by Twitter.
3 days after being admitted to the Walter Reed Medical Center with COVID-19, President Trump announced to the world he was headed back to the White House to continue his treatment, adding, "Don't be afraid of COVID." That despite furious debate about whether he's well enough to leave.
Though he may not entirely be out of the woods yet, the team and I agree that all our evaluations, and most importantly, his clinical status, support the president's safe return home.
Doctors saying he continues to improve after a delayed acknowledgement that his oxygen levels had dropped twice in recent days and that he's now taking a steroid, typically only recommended for seriously ill patients in the hospital.
They may be thinking that they can turn the White House into a bit of a hospital for him. But if he needs intensive care unit, he's going to have to go someplace with a great team. It's a very, very serious disease.
At the same time, questions remain about the scope of the outbreak inside the White House. Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany and 2 top assistants today joining the list of several high-level staffers testing positive. President Trump raised concerns about exposing even more of the people around him after yesterday's drive-by, thanking supporters outside Walter Reed. Secret Service agents were in the SUV with him, drawing criticism from one of the hospital's emergency physicians.
This was a dangerous move. There is no medical benefit for this to have taken place.
The White House saying the agents were protected and the medical team cleared the move.
Regardless of where the president is being treated, medical experts agree that the next few days remain a serious area of concern. From Walter Reed Medical Center, Alice Barr, Local 4.
All right, Alice, the president's tweet urging Americans don't be afraid of COVID is spurring a strong response from the medical community.
Let's bring in Dr. Frank McGeorge. Frank, what's your reaction to this?
Well, I think we've seen how damaging and deadly COVID can be. So frankly, it's just not helpful at a time when our best efforts to control the pandemic really rely on the public taking precautions seriously, like wearing masks.
Frank, the president obviously has access to world-class care. He's received a number of treatments already. At what exactly these medications aimed at trying to solve? And is it safe to receive them all at once?
Well, yeah, so the 3 most notable treatments that the president has received are Regeneron's monoclonal antibody cocktail, Gilead's remdesivir, and the steroid dexamethasone. Each one targets something different, from the virus to the way it copies itself to our own immune response. Friday, President Trump received an infusion of Regeneron's mix of 2 antibodies. They work by binding to the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is what the virus uses to invade our cells, and by attaching themselves, these laboratory-produced antibodies can neutralize the virus. It is important to note that although clinical studies suggest that it's safe, the Regeneron antibody cocktail is not FDA approved at this time and is not considered part of routine care. Now, over the weekend, the president also started a 5-day course of remdesivir. This drug does have an emergency use authorization granted by the FDA. Remdesivir works by blocking the ability of SARS-CoV-2 to make copies of itself once it's infected a human cell. If the virus can't copy itself, it can't go on to infect other cells in the body. Remdesivir has been shown to shorten the length of illness in hospitalized patients who receive it, but there is still some debate on how effectively it might reduce the risk of death. Now, the third medication given to the president is the steroid dexamethasone. This very common drug has potent anti-inflammatory effects and has been shown to decrease the likelihood of death in hospitalized patients that require oxygen or a ventilator. It works by calming the dangerous immune overresponse that the most severe COVID-19 patients have. Now, the biggest potential downside to dexamethasone is that by blunting the immune system, if it's given too early, there is a possibility that it could open the door to the virus by blocking a person's ability to fight back. Now, as far as the safety of giving all of these medications at once, remdesivir and dexamethasone are already routinely used together, and there isn't really any reason to think that the Regeneron antibodies would be problematic with those other medications.
Yeah, Frank, what about this convalescent plasma? We've heard the president talking about this and its potential benefits.
Yeah, he's shown some interest in that in the past. Now, as far as we know, he hasn't received convalescent plasma. But keep in mind, the Regeneron antibody cocktail that he received on Friday is a direct infusion of 2 specific antibodies that are directed against the coronavirus. The benefit of convalescent plasma is that it contains antibodies, but they are a non-specific mix. The antibody cocktail that he got would actually be much more targeted already.
Yeah, so much to consider here. Okay, Frank, we appreciate it.
Let's take a look now at the Sunday and Monday totals of new coronavirus cases in the state. 1,407 new positive tests. That average out, of course, to 703 cases a day. Also, 15 more deaths have been reported. Let me just pass along this news. The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has now issued a new order restricting gathering sizes, requiring face coverings, and limiting some businesses across the state. So that means, in light of the order that we saw from the state Supreme Court on Friday, which said that the governor's orders were no longer valid as emergency orders, this now moves them to departments, which will be a different kind of test for authority. That was so any order from the Health and Human Services would not have been covered by that decision on Friday. So we'll see if other departments now fall in line as well. But again, the news from the Department of Health and Human Services keeps the gathering size requirements in place and requiring face coverings in the state for the time being. We'll wait and get reaction to that. That just coming across in the last 2 or 3 minutes or so. Now, the state's also releasing new data on the number of outbreaks in Michigan schools.
And the list, as you can imagine, is growing. Statewide, 24 new schools were added to the list of schools with 2 or more cases of COVID-19. That includes Holy Redeemer in Detroit. That school has seen 11 new cases in the past week. That brings the total number of cases in Michigan schools and colleges to 4,063. Michigan State accounts for more than a quarter of that total. They've had 1,420 cases.
New tonight, Governor Whitmer asking, as we were just talking about, the Michigan Supreme Court to keep those emergency orders in place for another 3 weeks.
And that comes after the court ruled the governor overstepped her authority with her emergency order. So let's get to Rod Maloney. He's live to kind of sort this whole thing out for us, Rod.
Well, there's so much to deal with here. Devin just talked about the MDHHS putting out its order this afternoon, and they're telling us that they believe that they are legally good with that. The governor wants 28 days, not just 21, to keep her orders in place, but it looks like that may not be the case because the House Speaker made it clear that he believes that the court's ruling on Friday started on Friday. Over the weekend, the Senate Majority Leader said the mask mandate is likely to go away. The governor wants it to stay. And if she doesn't have the authority to mandate it, she believes the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services does. So at a Flint area campaign stop today, she said,
there still is a mask rule under the DHHS director's epidemic authority. And we know that masks work, and it's on all of us to do our part and to have some personal responsibility to keeping ourselves, our families, and our economy going.
The governor also put out a statement telling the legislature to get serious about COVID and get back to work, as it doesn't have many sessions scheduled over the next month. House Speaker Lee Chatfield weighed in on that this afternoon.
Back in April and early May, we extended our hand of cooperation to the governor. She rejected it. We wanted to work together and cooperate. She chose to go it alone. But I'll tell you this, Rod, had we actually cooperated, elementary schools and gyms probably would have been open before strip clubs and casinos. So we have been taking this seriously. And now we're going to be working together in cooperation to open our state up safely with data and transparency for the first time in 6 months.
The governor also says the legislature needs to concern itself with one of her orders that would preserve unemployment benefits for nearly 900,000 Michiganders. Speaker Chatfield said all of that is under review. Now, to give you a little bit more clarity, the MDHHS says that the mask mandate will stay in effect, that the capacity requirements in stores and the like are going to stay in effect as well. But more than that, establishments with
And we do apologize.
Dance or mingle.
There we go. We had Rod was explaining that this new order from Health and Human Services. It's basically saying that bars have to close indoor common areas and indoor gatherings prohibited in most areas where alcohol is sold. So kind of backstopping what the governor had wanted before. We'll wait and see what the courts have to say about that. Let's move to other news this afternoon. A woman driving along I-96 has her vehicle hit by a sandbag thrown from an overpass. Happened late last night near Old Plank Road in Lyon Township. Sean Lay has a close look at the damage and shows us how police were able to quickly make an arrest.
Can you just imagine the trauma this driver is going through tonight, still recovering from injuries, but the shock from last night, driving along right here and having a sandbag come right through her windshield. Take a look at the damage done to her car.
I'm on the freeway 96. Someone just threw a rock over an overpass and it went through my windshield and hit me in the head.
These photos tell the story. That's a 40-pound sandbag that hit right in the center of a woman's windshield as she was driving along I-96 near Old Plank Road in Lyon Township last night. MSP says she was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. That sandbag was thrown on purpose by a 41-year-old man who crashed his truck on I-96, a single vehicle accident. He left his truck and walked all the way up to the overpass and started throwing sandbags at the cars below.
There was a guy on the overpass. I saw it coming down. I couldn't swerve. It hit right in the middle of my windshield. It hit me in the face.
Could have been a lot worse. She was pretty lucky that she wasn't killed in this incident.
There are a lot of sandbags near the overpass. Workers nearby say they believe the man grabbed bags that were holding down caution signs. In fact, you can see one of those bags the man threw still on the shoulder of I-96. That man was picked up and then taken home to Brighton by another driver. He told the driver what he did, and that driver called police, who came and arrested him. No reason given why he threw those sandbags.
I think society needs to maybe get itself together a little bit.
The latest from MSP, that driver still recovering right now. In Lyon Township, Sean Lay, Local 4.
Okay, Sean, we are off and running here on a beautiful Monday. Let's check in with Ben.
Ken and Devin, good afternoon. We've had 5 days in October. All 5 of those days have been below average. That stops tomorrow as unseasonably mild air moves in, but also tracking what is going to be Hurricane Delta as it heads towards the U.S. More on that next.
It's a charming harbor village on the shore of Lake Huron. But the charges against one of their own here are shaking residents to the bone. A 15-year-old girl, a truck driver, and a life-saving text to 911. The story coming up.
Multiple men using several weapons to try and hurt each other, all of them fighting in broad daylight.
It was complete chaos.
Here an account from a witness who saw it all happening firsthand.